The coffee shop was emptying out when Tessa Porter's laptop screen went black for the third time that afternoon, and she felt her entire body sag with exhaustion because this presentation was due in 6 hours and she had nothing left to give. She pressed her palms against her eyes, willing herself not to cry in public. The past 3 weeks had been a blur of apologizing to her boss for needing time off when her mom got sick, apologizing to her mom for not being there enough, apologizing to her landlord for being 2 days late with rent, apologizing to everyone, constantly, for taking up space and having needs and being human. "Excuse me." The voice was deep, quiet. "I noticed your laptop keeps shutting down. Battery issue." Tessa looked up to find a man standing a respectful distance from her table. He was tall, probably in his early 30s, with dark hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it a few times, and sharp features that would have been intimidating, except for the genuine concern in his gray eyes. "Yeah," she said, her voice coming out hoarse. "I've been meaning to get it fixed, but I just haven't had time, and now I'm in the middle of this presentation that's due tonight, and I don't know what I'm going to do." She was rambling. She knew she was rambling. She opened her mouth to apologize for rambling when he spoke first. "You don't have to explain," he said, and something in his tone made her pause. "I just wanted to offer help if you need it. I have a laptop in my car. You're welcome to use it to finish your work." Tessa stared at him. "You don't even know me." "No," he agreed, "but you look like you're having a rough day and I have something that might help. That's enough for me." She realized she'd never heard that before. The automatic acceptance without requiring her to justify herself, to prove her worthiness of assistance, to explain in detail why she deserved help. It was such a small thing, but it cracked something open in her chest. "I'm Zander," he said, extending his hand. "Zander Zimmerman. Tessa Porter." She shook his hand, noting the firm grip, the calluses that suggested he worked with his hands despite the expensive watch on his wrist. "Are you sure? I mean, I could be a laptop thief for all you know." He smiled then, and it transformed his whole face. "Call it a leap of faith." "I'll be right back." He returned 5 minutes later with a sleek laptop that probably cost more than her entire month's salary. He set it on the table, opened it, logged in as a guest, and pushed it toward her. "There. It's all yours. Take as long as you need." "I can't just take your laptop," Tessa protested. "You're not taking it, I'm offering it. There's a difference." He gestured to the chair across from her. "Mind if I sit? I promise I'm not hovering. I just haven't finished my coffee yet." It was the most surreal thing that had happened to her in months, but Tessa found herself nodding. She transferred her files to a cloud drive from her dying laptop and pulled them up on his machine. The difference was immediate. The software she needed ran smoothly, no lag, no freezing. She could actually work. Zander sat across from her, reading something on his phone, occasionally glancing up but never pressuring her to make conversation. It was comfortable in a way that shouldn't have been possible with a stranger. An hour passed. Then another. The coffee shop staff started giving them looks as closing time approached. "I'm almost done," Tessa said, typing frantically. "Just need to finish this last slide." "Take your time," Zander said easily. She saved the presentation, uploaded it to her company's server, and finally closed the laptop with a sigh of relief that came from her toes. "Done. Thank you. Seriously, thank you. You have no idea what this means to me. Rough deadline. Rough everything, honestly." The words slipped out before she could stop them. "Sorry, I shouldn't dump on you. You don't have to explain," he said again, and there it was, that same acceptance. "But if you want to talk about it, I'm listening." Tessa looked at him, really looked at him. There was something solid about Zander, something steady that made her want to trust him despite every warning her mother had ever given her about strangers. "My mom's sick," she found herself saying. Cancer. She's in treatment and it's going well, but it's expensive and exhausting, and I'm trying to be there for her while working full-time, and I just feel like I'm constantly falling short everywhere. That's a lot to carry. Yeah, she laughed, but it came out shaky. Yeah, it really is. The barista approached their table. Hey, folks, we're closing in 5 minutes. Zander looked at Tessa. Have you eaten today? She tried to remember. I had a granola bar this morning. That's not food. Come on, there's a diner around the corner, my treat. You've already done so much. I'm offering because I want to, not because I expect anything. He stood, gathering his laptop. Besides, I'm hungry too, and eating alone is boring. The diner was one of those old-school places with red vinyl booths and a jukebox in the corner that probably hadn't worked since the 80s. They slid into a booth near the window, and Tessa realized this was the first time she'd felt relaxed in weeks. They ordered burgers and fries, and as they waited, Zander asked about her work. She told him about her job as an event coordinator for a mid-sized marketing firm, how she'd been with the company for 3 years, working her way up from assistant to junior coordinator to finally running her own events. It's good, she said. I mean, it's stressful, but I like the creativity of it. Making something happen from nothing, seeing an empty space transform into something memorable. That's a gift, Zander said. Not everyone can visualize like that. What about you? What do you do? He hesitated just for a moment. I'm in construction. Really? That's why your hands are like that. She gestured to the calluses she'd noticed earlier. Yeah, I'm hands on most days. Can't stand sitting in an office all the time. The food arrived and Tessa discovered she was starving. They ate and talked, and it was easy. So easy. Zander had this way of listening that made her feel heard, not just tolerated. He asked follow-up questions, remembered details, laughed at her stories about event disasters. There was this one wedding, she said, where the groom's ex-girlfriend showed up drunk and tried to object during the ceremony. Except she was so drunk she couldn't remember the groom's name and kept calling him Bradley. His name is Michael. Zander laughed, a genuine sound that crinkled the corners of his eyes. What did you do? I had security escort her out while the bride's brother played extra loud music on his phone to cover up her yelling. Then I served the entire wedding party an extra round of champagne to smooth things over. The bride still sends me a Christmas card every year. You're good in a crisis. I've had practice. Tessa took a sip of her water. Growing up with 3 younger brothers will teach you crisis management real fast. 3 brothers. That explains the thick skin. You have no idea. They made it their mission in life to embarrass me. But she was smiling as she said it, thinking of Marcus, Joel, and little Danny, who wasn't so little anymore at 17. They talked until the diner staff started giving them the same looks the coffee shop had. Zander paid the bill despite Tessa's protests, and they walked out into the cool evening air. I should get home, Tessa said reluctantly, but thank you for everything. You really saved me today. Can I have your number? Zander asked, and there was something almost vulnerable in the way he said it. I'd like to take you out properly. Dinner, maybe. Somewhere without staff kicking us out. Tessa felt her heart skip. I'd like that. They exchanged numbers, and Zander insisted on walking her to her car. It was parked 3 blocks away, and they walked slowly, neither wanting the evening to end. Saturday, Zander suggested. 7 o'clock, I know a good Italian place. Saturday's perfect. He waited until she was safely in her car before walking away, and Tessa sat there for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. She'd met a kind, attractive man who'd helped her without expecting anything in return, who'd listened to her without judgment, who'd made her laugh for the first time in weeks. She drove to her apartment in a daze, but reality came crashing back as soon as she walked through the door. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mom's nurse. The treatment had made her mom sick again, and she'd spent the evening throwing up. Tessa texted back that she'd come by first thing in the morning, then collapsed onto her couch. The weight of everything settled back onto her shoulders, but somehow it felt a little lighter than before. Saturday took forever to arrive. Tessa worked late Thursday and Friday, visited her mom both days, and barely had time to breathe. But when Saturday evening finally came, she stood in front of her closet trying to figure out what to wear on a date with a construction worker who had a laptop that cost more than her car. She settled on a simple navy dress that made her feel confident without trying too hard. She left her dark hair down, put on minimal makeup, and was ready when Zander texted that he was outside. He'd cleaned up nice. Dark jeans, a white button-down with the sleeves rolled to his forearms, and that same watch she'd noticed before. He opened the car door for her, which should have felt old-fashioned but instead felt natural. The Italian place turned out to be a small, family-owned restaurant tucked away in a neighborhood Tessa had never explored. The hostess greeted Zander by name. "Mr. Zimmerman, so good to see you." "Your usual table." They were led to a quiet corner booth with a candle flickering on the table. The restaurant was cozy, intimate, with the smell of garlic and fresh bread filling the air. "You come here often?" Tessa asked as they settled in. "It's my favorite spot in the city." "The family who owns it are from Naples. Everything's authentic." They ordered wine and pasta, and the conversation picked up right where they'd left it at the diner. Zander asked about her mom, and Tessa found herself being honest about how scared she was, how helpless she felt watching her mom suffer through treatment. "She's the strongest person I know," Tessa said. "She raised 4 kids on her own after my dad left. Never complained, never made us feel like we were a burden, and now she's fighting this and all I can do is sit there and hold her hand." "That's not nothing," Zander said quietly. "Sometimes being there is everything. I just wish I could do more. The medical bills are insane, even with insurance. She won't let me help as much as I want to, says I need to save for my own future. Sounds like a good mom, the best." Tessa wiped at her eyes, embarrassed. "God, I'm sorry. This is supposed to be a date, not a therapy session." "You don't have to explain," Zander said for the 3rd time, and Tessa felt that same crack in her chest widen. "I asked because I care. You don't have to apologize for having feelings." The food arrived, and it was incredible. They shared bites of each other's dishes, argued playfully over whether red sauce or white sauce was superior, and by the time dessert came around, Tessa realized she was genuinely happy. "Tell me about your family," she said. "Fair's fair." Zander's expression shifted slightly. "Not much to tell. My dad died when I was young. My mom raised me on her own. She's remarried now, happy. Any siblings?" "Nope, just me. Makes for quiet holidays." "You should come to one of mine," Tessa said before thinking better of it. "My brothers would probably interrogate you like you're joining the FBI, but the food's good." Zander's smile was soft. "I'd like that." They lingered over coffee, neither wanting the date to end. Finally, the restaurant staff started cleaning up around them, and they took the hint. Zander drove her home, and they sat in his car outside her apartment building, talking for another hour. He told her about growing up in the city, about how he'd always loved building things with his hands, about his dog, a German shepherd named Duke who was apparently terrible at being intimidating. "He's afraid of the mailman," Zander said. "Hides behind me whenever anyone knocks on the door." "That's adorable." "That's embarrassing. He's supposed to be a guard dog," Tessa laughed. "Can I meet him sometime?" "Absolutely. He'd love you." There was a pause, comfortable but charged. Zander reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering on her cheek. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. Tessa nodded, unable to find words. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to change her mind, and when his lips met hers, it was gentle and perfect and made her toes curl in her shoes. They kissed until the windows fogged up, until Tessa's phone buzzed with a text from her mom's night nurse doing a routine check-in. She pulled away reluctantly. "I should go," she whispered. "When can I see you again? Tomorrow? I'm visiting my mom in the morning, but I'm free in the afternoon." "Perfect. I'll pick you up at 2. Tessa floated up to her apartment, touching her lips, replaying the kiss in her mind. She texted her best friend Kara, who immediately called demanding details. "He sounds too good to be true," Kara said suspiciously. "Rich laptop, nice car, perfect gentleman." "What's the catch?" "Maybe there isn't one," Tessa said. "Maybe he's just a good guy." "Those don't exist, cynic. Realist. But I'm happy for you. You deserve something good." Sunday afternoon, Zander picked her up in worn jeans and a t-shirt that showed off his broad shoulders. They drove to a park on the edge of the city, where Duke was waiting with a dog walker Zander had hired for the morning. Duke was indeed terrible at being intimidating. He bounded over to Tessa, tail wagging so hard his whole body shook, and immediately rolled over for belly rubs. "Traitor," Zander said fondly. They walked through the park, Duke running ahead and then circling back to check on them. Zander took her hand naturally, lacing their fingers together, and Tessa felt something settle in her chest, something that felt like hope. "I need to tell you something," Zander said after a while. "I haven't been completely honest about what I do." Tessa's heart sank. Here it was, the catch Kara had predicted. "I do work in construction," he continued quickly, seeing her expression. "But I don't work for a construction company. I own one, Zimmerman Construction. We're one of the larger firms in the state." Tessa stopped walking. "You own a construction company?" "Yes." "A large construction company?" "Yes." "So when you said you were in construction, I meant it. I'm on site most days. I like the work. But yeah, I'm also the CEO, and there's a lot of money involved, and I didn't tell you right away because people get weird about it." Tessa processed this. The expensive laptop, the nice car, the watch, the hostess at the restaurant knowing his name, it all made sense now. "Why tell me now?" "Because I like you," Zander said simply. "And I don't want there to be secrets between us. I want you to know who I am, really. A millionaire." "Technically, yes. Does it matter?" Tessa thought about it. "I don't know. Maybe, we're from completely different worlds, Zander. We're from the same city. We like the same food. We both think Duke is the worst guard dog ever, and I can't stop thinking about you. That feels like the same world to me." She looked up at him, at the earnestness in his gray eyes, and felt her resistance crumbling. "I can't offer you anything fancy. I'm drowning in student loans, my apartment is tiny, and my life is chaos right now." "You don't have to explain," he said again. "I don't care about any of that. I care about you." "This is crazy," Tessa said, but she was smiling. "Maybe. But it's good crazy, right?" "Yeah," she admitted. "It's good crazy." They kissed again, right there in the park with Duke barking excitedly around them, and Tessa let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this could work. The next few weeks were a blur of stolen moments between Tessa's chaotic schedule. Zander never complained when she had to cancel plans to take her mom to treatments. He showed up at the hospital with coffee and sandwiches, sitting quietly in the waiting room while Tessa held her mom's hand through rough days. Her mom, Janet, was suspicious at first. "He's too good-looking to be single and interested in my daughter who has no time for a relationship," she said bluntly. "Thanks for the vote of confidence, Mom. You know what I mean. What's his angle?" But Zander won Janet over the same way he'd won over Tessa. By showing up, consistently, without expecting anything in return. He fixed the leaky faucet in Janet's bathroom. He brought groceries without being asked. He made Janet laugh during her worst days, telling her stories about Duke's latest adventures in cowardice. "Okay," Janet admitted to Tessa one afternoon, "I like him, but if he hurts you, I'm haunting him when I die." "You're not going to die, Mom. We're all going to die, honey. I'm just on a more aggressive timeline. Don't joke about that." Janet squeezed her hand. "I'm allowed to joke about my own mortality, and I'm serious about Zander. He's a good one. Don't let him get away." Tessa's brothers were harder to convince. Marcus, the oldest at 24, was openly hostile. "Construction CEO, come on, Tess. He's probably married with 3 kids in the suburbs." "He's not married." "How do you know?" "Because I've been to his house, Marcus. There's no evidence of a wife or kids, just Duke and a lot of expensive furniture." "You've been to his house?" Joel, the middle brother at 21, looked scandalized. "Does Mom know?" "I'm 28 years old. I don't need Mom's permission to visit my boyfriend's house." "Boyfriend," Danny, the youngest, said dreamily. "Tessa has a boyfriend who's a millionaire. Does he have a younger sister?" "I could marry rich." "You're 17. You're not marrying anyone," Tessa said firmly. But eventually, even her brothers came around. Zander invited them all to a basketball game, courtside seats that cost more than Tessa's monthly rent, and the guys were sold. They came back talking about how cool Zander was, how he knew all the players, how he'd gotten them autographs. "He's still too good to be true," Marcus said, but there was less hostility in it now. "Just be careful, okay?" "I will." 2 months into dating, Zander's mother invited them to dinner. Tessa was terrified. "What if she hates me?" Tessa asked, staring at her closet like it had personally offended her. "She's going to love you," Zander said from her bed, where he was lounging like he owned the place. "My mom is the least judgmental person I know. She's going to think I'm after your money. She's going to think you're beautiful and smart and way too good for me." The dinner was at Zander's childhood home, a modest house in a middle-class neighborhood that surprised Tessa. She'd expected a mansion. "Mom refused to move," Zander explained as they pulled up. "Said she liked her neighbors and her garden and she didn't care how much money I had." Zander's mom, Patricia, was a warm woman in her mid-50s with the same gray eyes as her son. She pulled Tessa into a hug immediately. "It's so good to finally meet you. Zander hasn't stopped talking about you." "Mom," Zander said, embarrassed. Patricia's husband, Richard, was a quiet man who taught high school history. He shook Tessa's hand with a kind smile. "Welcome to the family chaos." Dinner was relaxed and fun. Patricia told embarrassing stories about young Zander, who hid his face in his hands and groaned. Richard talked about his students with genuine affection, and Tessa felt something loosen in her chest that she hadn't even realized was tight. This was real. Zander was real. This wasn't some fantasy that would evaporate when reality intruded. After dinner, Patricia pulled Tessa aside while the men were cleaning up. "I know Zander told you about his father," Patricia said gently. "About how he died when Zander was young. He mentioned it, yes. What he probably didn't mention is how hard it was. We lost everything when his father died. Medical bills, funeral costs, and suddenly, I was a single mom working 3 jobs to keep our house. Zander started working when he was 12. Odd jobs, lawn mowing, whatever he could find. He's never forgotten what it's like to struggle." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I see the way you look at him, like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, like you think he's from some different world. He's not. He built his company from nothing, working construction jobs through college, saving every penny. Yes, he has money now, but he remembers what it's like to not have it. So don't feel like you're not enough for him. You are." Tessa felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you." Patricia patted her arm. He loves you, you know. I can see it in his eyes when he looks at you." "I love him too," Tessa said, and realized it was true. Somewhere between the coffee shop and now, she'd fallen completely in love with Zander Zimmerman. That night back at Zander's house, they lay in his bed with Duke sprawled across their feet. Tessa turned to face him. "Your mom told me about your dad, about how you grew up." Zander tensed slightly. "I don't like to talk about it much. Makes people uncomfortable." "You don't have to explain," Tessa said, throwing his own words back at him. "But I want you to know that I see you. Not your money, not your company. You, the man who helps strangers in coffee shops and loves his terrible guard dog and calls his mom every Sunday. That's who I fell in love with." Zander's eyes widened. "You love me?" "Yeah," Tessa said, her heart pounding. "I really do." He kissed her then, deep and slow, and whispered against her lips, "I love you too. Have since that first night at the diner when you told me about the drunk ex-girlfriend at the wedding." They made love that night, tender and passionate, and Tessa felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. But life, as always, had other plans. 3 weeks later, Tessa's mom took a turn for the worse. The cancer had spread and the doctors said there wasn't much more they could do. Tessa took a leave of absence from work, camping out at the hospital, refusing to leave her mom's side. Zander was there every day, bringing food, bringing comfort, bringing his steady presence that kept Tessa from falling apart completely. Her brothers came when they could, but they were falling apart in their own ways. Marcus drank too much. Joel stopped eating. Danny went silent, staring at his phone like it held answers. "I can't lose her," Tessa sobbed into Zander's chest one night in the hospital parking lot. "I'm not ready." "I know, baby, I know. She's supposed to meet her grandkids someday. She's supposed to retire and travel and do all the things she couldn't do when she was raising us. This isn't fair." "It's not," Zander agreed. "It's really not fair." He held her while she cried, and when she was done, he helped her wash her face in the hospital bathroom and walked her back to her mom's room. Janet was awake, looking small and frail in the hospital bed, but her eyes were alert when Tessa came in. "There's my girl," she said weakly. "Hey, Mom." Tessa took her hand. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm dying," Janet said with brutal honesty. "Because I am." "Mom, don't." "Tessa, listen to me. I need to tell you something important." Janet looked past Tessa to where Zander stood in the doorway. "Both of you come here." They approached the bed and Janet took each of their hands. "I don't have much time left," she said. "And I need to know you'll be okay, Tessa. I need to know someone will take care of my girl." "Mom, I can take care of myself." "I know you can. You're the strongest person I know. But you don't have to do it alone anymore." She looked at Zander. "You love my daughter." "More than anything," Zander said without hesitation. "Then promise me you'll take care of her. Not her bills or her rent or whatever practical nonsense. Promise me you'll take care of her heart." "I promise," Zander said, and there were tears in his eyes. Janet smiled. "Good, that's good." She looked at Tessa. "And you, baby girl, promise me you'll let him. Promise me you won't push him away when things get hard." "I promise, Mom." "Good, now get out of here, both of you. Go eat something. Be young and in love. Don't waste your life sitting in a hospital room. I'm not leaving you." "Yes, you are. I'm tired and I want to sleep and you're hovering. Go." Tessa kissed her mom's forehead. "I love you. I love you too, baby, more than you'll ever know." They left, and Tessa made it as far as the elevator before collapsing. Zander caught her, held her up, and when the elevator doors opened, he picked her up and carried her to his car. "I've got you," he murmured. "I've got you." Janet died 3 days later, surrounded by her children. It was quiet and peaceful, and the nurses said she'd simply stopped fighting. Tessa held her mom's hand until it went cold, and then she let her brothers pull her away. The funeral was a blur. Tessa went through the motions, greeting people she barely remembered, accepting condolences that meant nothing. Zander was there, a solid presence at her side, and when it was over, he took her back to his house. "Stay with me," he said. "Just for a few days. You don't have to be alone right now." She stayed for a week, barely speaking, barely eating. Zander worked from home, keeping an eye on her, making sure she drank water and slept. Duke seemed to sense something was wrong and stayed close, resting his head on her lap whenever she sat down. Slowly, very slowly, Tessa started to come back to herself. She cried a lot. She talked about her mom, about memories, about regrets. Zander listened to all of it, never judging, never telling her she should feel differently. "I feel like I should be handling this better," Tessa said one night. "Like I should be stronger." "You don't have to explain," Zander said gently. "Grief doesn't have a timeline. You're allowed to feel however you feel. What if I never feel normal again? Then we'll figure out a new normal together." 2 weeks after the funeral, Tessa went back to work. It was hard, but it helped to have something to focus on. Her boss was understanding, giving her lighter projects, easing her back in. But the medical bills were devastating. Even with insurance, her mom's final weeks of care had been expensive. Tessa looked at the numbers and felt panic rise in her throat. Between her student loans, her rent, and now these bills, she was drowning. She didn't tell Zander. He'd offered to help with her mom's medical expenses before, and Tessa had refused. She couldn't take his money. It felt wrong, like she was using him. But the bills kept coming, and Tessa started picking up extra projects at work, freelancing on the weekends, cutting every expense she could think of. She was exhausted, running on fumes, and Zander noticed. "You're working too much," he said one night when she fell asleep over dinner at his place. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. Talk to me, Tessa. What's going on?" "Nothing. I'm just tired." "You're lying to me." There was hurt in his voice. "Why won't you let me help?" "Because I can handle it myself." "You don't have to handle everything yourself. That's what I'm here for." "I don't want your money, Zander. This isn't about money. This is about being partners. This is about letting someone care about you." "I can't," Tessa said, and she was crying now. "I can't take anything else from you. You've already given me so much, and I have nothing to give back." "You think you have nothing to give me?" Zander looked stunned. "Tessa, you've given me everything. You've made me happier than I've ever been. You make me laugh, you challenge me, you see me as just a person, not a bank account. That's worth more than any amount of money. But the bills are just numbers. Let me help you, please. Not because you need me to, but because I want to. Because I love you and I want to build a life with you, and that means handling things together." Tessa looked at him, at the love and frustration and hope in his eyes, and remembered her promise to her mom. "Don't push him away." "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." They spent that night going through her finances together. Zander didn't judge, didn't lecture. He just helped her create a plan. He paid off the medical bills outright, refusing to let her argue about paying him back. "Consider it a gift," he said, "to your mom's memory. She took care of you your whole life. Let me honor that by making sure you're not buried in debt because of it." When Tessa tried to protest, he said those 4 words again. "You don't have to explain, just accept it." So she did. And something shifted between them, something that felt like true partnership. 6 months after Janet's death, Tessa's brothers helped her clean out their childhood home. It was hard, emotional work, sorting through their mom's belongings, deciding what to keep and what to donate. Zander helped, packing boxes without complaint, and when Marcus made a joke about their mom's terrible taste in decorative plates, everyone laughed until they cried. "She'd be happy we're doing this together," Joel said quietly. "Yeah," Tessa agreed. "She would." They found a box in the attic filled with old photos. Pictures of Janet as a young mother, tired but smiling, surrounded by her kids. Pictures of birthday parties and holidays and ordinary moments that had meant everything. At the bottom of the box was an envelope with Tessa's name on it. Inside was a letter in her mom's handwriting. "My darling Tessa," it began. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and I hope you're not crying too much. I want you to know that my biggest pride in life was raising you and your brothers. You were never a burden. You were always my joy. And now that you've found Zander, I want you to know that you're allowed to be happy. You're allowed to be taken care of. You're allowed to need someone. Love isn't about being perfect or self-sufficient. Love is about trusting someone else with your imperfect, messy, beautiful life. Trust him, baby. And let yourself be loved. You deserve all the happiness in the world. Love, Mom." Tessa read the letter out loud to her brothers, and they all cried together in their mom's dusty attic. When they came downstairs, Zander took one look at Tessa's face and pulled her into his arms. "She left me a letter," Tessa said into his chest. "What did it say? That I'm allowed to be happy, that I deserve love. She was right. I know." Tessa pulled back to look at him. "I want to move in with you, officially. Not just staying over sometimes, but actually move in. Build a life together." Zander's face lit up. "Really, really, if the offer's still open." "The offer is always open." He kissed her soft and sweet. "I love you. I love you too." Moving in together was an adjustment. Tessa had to get used to someone else being in her space all the time, to sharing decisions, to the casual intimacy of living with someone you love. But it was good. It was right. They fell into routines. Morning coffee together before work, walking Duke in the evenings, lazy Sunday mornings in bed. Tessa kept her job, insisting she wanted to maintain her independence, and Zander respected that. He never made her feel like she should quit or that his money meant she didn't need to work. "Your career matters," he said when she brought it up. "I would never ask you to give that up." A year after Janet's death, Tessa got promoted to senior event coordinator. It came with a significant raise and more responsibility, and she was thrilled. Zander took her out to celebrate, and at dinner he handed her a small box. "What's this?" Tessa asked. "Open it." Inside was a key. Not just any key, a car key. "Zander, what? Your car barely starts anymore," he said quickly. "And before you argue, this isn't about me thinking you can't take care of yourself. This is about me wanting you to be safe. I worry about you driving that death trap around." Tessa looked at the key, then at him. A year ago, she would have refused. She would have been too proud, too stubborn. But she'd learned something about accepting love. "Thank you," she said simply. His smile could have powered the city. The car was beautiful, practical, and perfect. Tessa drove it to work the next day and almost cried when it started on the first try without any weird clanking sounds. Life settled into something beautiful. Tessa's brothers came over for dinner regularly. Marcus had gotten engaged to his longtime girlfriend, and they were planning a wedding. Joel was in his last year of college, talking about grad school. Danny had started his senior year of high school, already getting acceptance letters from universities. "Mom would be so proud of you guys," Tessa said one night when they were all together. "She'd be proud of you too," Marcus said. "You found a good one. The best one." 2 years into living together, Zander asked Tessa to go on a trip with him. Just a long weekend, he said, to the coast. His mom would watch Duke. They drove up Friday afternoon, checking into a beautiful bed and breakfast with ocean views. Saturday, they walked on the beach, ate seafood, explored tide pools like kids. It was perfect. Sunday morning, Zander woke Tessa up early. "Come on," he said. "I want to show you something." They walked down to the beach just as the sun was rising. The ocean was calm, the sky painted in shades of pink and gold. It was breathtaking. "This is where my parents got engaged," Zander said quietly. "My dad proposed to my mom right here on this beach 35 years ago." Tessa turned to look at him, and her breath caught. He was down on one knee, holding a ring box. "Tessa Porter, you are the strongest, most incredible person I've ever met. You make me laugh, you make me think, you make me want to be better. I want to spend the rest of my life taking care of you, not because you need me to, but because I love you, and that's what partners do. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Tessa said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. He stood and kissed her as the sun rose behind them, and Tessa felt her mom's presence like a blessing. They called their families from the beach. Patricia cried happy tears. Tessa's brothers whooped and hollered so loud Zander had to hold the phone away from his ear. "We're getting married." Tessa shouted into the phone. "About time," Marcus said. "We were wondering when he'd finally do it." "You knew he asked our permission last month. Very traditional of him." Tessa looked at Zander, who had the grace to look sheepish. "You asked my brothers. I wanted to do it right." She kissed him again, long and deep, and didn't care who was watching. Planning the wedding was chaotic but fun. Tessa used every event planning skill she had, creating something beautiful and intimate. They decided on a garden wedding at Patricia's house, with only close family and friends. The night before the wedding, Tessa stood in her old bedroom at her childhood home, which Marcus and his wife had moved into after Janet died. She looked at the photos on the wall, at her mom's smiling face in every picture. "I wish you were here," she said to the empty room. "I wish you could walk me down the aisle. I wish you could meet your future grandkids. I wish for so many things." But she felt her mom's presence, felt her love, and knew that Janet was proud. The wedding day was perfect. Clear blue sky, gentle breeze, flowers everywhere. Marcus walked Tessa down the aisle since their dad had never been around. Joel and Danny stood up as well. All three brothers united in supporting their sister. Zander waited at the altar, and the look on his face when he saw Tessa made her knees weak. Pure love, pure joy, pure certainty. They wrote their own vows. Zander promised to love her through good days and hard days, to be her partner in everything, to never let her feel alone. Tessa promised to trust him, to let him care for her, to build a life of laughter and love and adventure together. "You don't have to explain yourself to me," Zander said, going off script. "Not now, not ever. You're enough exactly as you are." "And you don't have to be perfect," Tessa replied. "Just present, just you. That's all I need." They kissed as husband and wife, and everyone cheered. The reception was a joyful blur. Dancing, laughter, toasts that made everyone cry and laugh in equal measure. Patricia pulled Tessa aside at one point. "Welcome to the family officially," she said, hugging her tight. "I always wanted a daughter." "I always wanted a mom," Tessa said, and realized it was true. Patricia had stepped into that role gradually, gently, filling a space that had been empty. That night in their hotel room, Tessa and Zander lay tangled together, exhausted and happy. "We're married," Tessa said wonderingly. "We are. You're stuck with me now. And Duke, can't forget Duke. Duke comes with the package, terrible guard dog and all." They fell asleep smiling, and when Tessa woke up the next morning, her first thought was how grateful she was. For this man, for this life, for second chances and small miracles. A year into their marriage, Tessa stopped taking her birth control. They hadn't really talked about it beyond agreeing they both wanted kids someday. So when she started feeling nauseous a few months later, she took a test. Positive. She stared at the little plus sign, heart pounding. She was going to be a mom. She and Zander were going to have a baby. She told him that night at dinner, sliding the test across the table without a word. Zander looked at it, looked at her, and then burst into tears. "We're having a baby," he said through tears. "We're having a baby." He came around the table, dropped to his knees, and pressed his face to her still flat stomach. "Hi, baby," he whispered. I'm your dad and I already love you so much. Tessa cried too, running her fingers through his hair and felt her mom's presence again. She was going to be a mom like Janet had been, strong, loving, present. The baby would never meet Janet, but they'd know her through stories, through photos, through the love that had shaped Tessa's life. The pregnancy was smooth. Tessa worked up until her 7th month, then transitioned to remote work and eventually maternity leave. Zander was attentive without being overbearing, going to every appointment, reading every book, preparing the nursery with an enthusiasm that made Tessa fall even more in love with him. When they found out they were having a girl, Zander looked at Tessa with wet eyes. "Can we name her Janet?" Tessa nodded, unable to speak. Her mom's name would live on. Her mom's love would continue. Janet Patricia Zimmerman was born on a sunny Tuesday morning, screaming her lungs out and perfect in every way. Tessa held her daughter and felt everything come full circle. Her mom had held her like this once, had looked at her with this same overwhelming love. "Hi, sweet girl," Tessa whispered. "I'm your mom, and I promise I'm going to love you the way my mom loved me, completely, unconditionally, forever." Zander sat beside them on the hospital bed, one arm around Tessa, one finger wrapped in baby Janet's tiny fist. "We made a person," he said in awe. "We did. She's perfect. Just like her mom." Bringing Janet home was terrifying and wonderful. The first few weeks were a blur of feedings and diaper changes and very little sleep. But Zander was there for all of it, splitting night duties, learning alongside Tessa, never complaining about the exhaustion. "You're a natural," Tessa said one night, watching him rock Janet back to sleep. "So are you." "I'm winging it." "We both are. That's parenthood, right? Making it up as we go and hoping we don't screw them up too badly." Tessa's brothers were obsessed with their niece. They came over constantly, fighting over who got to hold her, taking a million pictures. Marcus's wife was pregnant now too, and they joked about their kids growing up together. Patricia was the perfect grandmother, offering help without being pushy, sharing wisdom without judgment. She'd sit for hours just watching Janet sleep, and Tessa knew she was thinking about Zander as a baby, remembering those early days. As Janet grew, Tessa told her stories about her grandmother, about how strong she'd been, how much she'd loved her family, how she'd fought until the very end. Janet wouldn't remember her, but she'd know her. On Janet's first birthday, they had a party at the house. Family and friends filled the backyard, and baby Janet smashed into her cake with enthusiastic joy. Tessa stood with Zander, watching their daughter, surrounded by people who loved them. "Can you believe this is our life?" she asked. "Some days, no. Most days I'm just grateful, me too." That night, after everyone had left and Janet was asleep, Tessa and Zander sat on their back porch with glasses of wine. Duke was sprawled at their feet, getting old now but still loyal. "Do you ever think about that day in the coffee shop?" Tessa asked. "All the time. Best laptop loan I ever made. You changed my life that day." "You changed mine too. I was going through the motions, working all the time, not really living. And then I saw you, stressed and beautiful and determined, and I thought maybe I could help. I didn't expect to fall in love. But you did. But I did, and I've never regretted it for a second." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out. Tessa thought about how far she'd come from that day in the coffee shop, how she'd been drowning, apologizing for existing, convinced she had to handle everything alone. And then Zander had said those 4 words that changed everything. "You don't have to explain." Those words had been a gift. Permission to be human, to be imperfect, to need help. They'd opened a door Tessa hadn't known was closed, letting in light and love and possibility. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what? For seeing me. For loving me. For teaching me that it's okay to let someone care." Zander took her hand, bringing it to his lips. You taught me just as much. You showed me what real strength looks like, what real love looks like. I'm the lucky one. We're both lucky. Yeah, he agreed. We really are. Inside, Janet made a small sound through the baby monitor. Tessa started to get up, but Zander waved her back down. I've got her. You sit, relax, enjoy the quiet. He disappeared inside, and Tessa heard him through the monitor talking softly to their daughter. It's okay, Janet. Daddy's here. You're safe. You're loved. You never have to explain yourself to us. You're enough, just as you are. Tessa smiled, tears gathering in her eyes. Happy tears this time. Grateful tears. She looked up at the stars and sent a silent thank you to her mom. Thank you for teaching me how to love. Thank you for fighting so hard. Thank you for that letter, for giving me permission to be happy. I did it, Mom, she thought. I let myself be loved. I built a life. And I'm going to raise Janet the way you raised me, with that same fierce, unconditional love. The back door opened, and Zander emerged with Janet in his arms. She was awake, looking around with wide, curious eyes. She wanted to see you, Zander said, sitting beside Tessa. Tessa took her daughter, breathing in her baby smell, feeling her warm weight. Hi, sweet girl, can't sleep. Janet babbled something incomprehensible, reaching for Tessa's hair. She's got your curiosity, Zander observed. Always wants to know what's happening. And your stubbornness. Look at how determined she is to get my hair. They sat together, a family of 3, plus one aging dog, the life Tessa had never imagined she could have. The love she'd never thought she deserved, but she'd learned something important. Love wasn't about deserving. It wasn't transactional. It was a gift, freely given, no explanations required. 2 years later, they had a son. Marcus James Zimmerman, named after Tessa's oldest brother and Zander's late father, whose middle name had been James. Marcus was easier than Janet had been, a calm baby who slept through the night early and smiled at everyone. We got lucky with this one, Zander said, watching Marcus nap peacefully. Or we're just better at this now, Tessa suggested. Let's go with lucky. I don't want to jinx it. With 2 kids and demanding careers, life was chaotic, but it was good chaos. Tessa had moved up to director of events at her company, running a team of coordinators. Zander's construction company had expanded to 3 states. They were busy, but they made time for what mattered. Date nights once a week, even if it was just dinner at home after the kids went to bed. Family dinners every Sunday. Annual vacations, just the 4 of them. They'd learned from Zander's mom and from Tessa's memories of her own mother that time together was the most valuable thing you could give. Janet started preschool, and Marcus learned to walk. The house was always messy, filled with toys and laughter and the beautiful chaos of small children. Duke passed away peacefully at 12, and they all cried together. They got a new puppy, a German shepherd they named Lady, and Duke's legacy of terrible guard dog behavior continued. On what would have been Janet Porter's 65th birthday, Tessa took her kids to the cemetery. Janet was 4 now, Marcus was 2. They brought flowers. This is your grandmother, Tessa told them. She loved you before you were even born. She was the strongest, kindest person I ever knew, and she taught me everything important about love. Tell us a story, Janet said. She was always asking for stories. So Tessa told them about the time their grandmother had stayed up all night sewing Halloween costumes, because Tessa had waited until the last minute to decide what she wanted to be. About how she'd worked 3 jobs but never missed a school play or parent-teacher conference. About her laugh, her terrible decorative plates, her fierce protection of her kids. She sounds nice, Marcus said. She was the best, and she'd love you both so much. They laid the flowers on the grave, and Tessa felt Zander's hand slip into hers. He'd come too, giving her this moment with her mom and their kids. "Thank you," she said to him later. "You don't have to explain," he replied with a smile. Those 4 words had become a running joke between them, but they still held weight. They still meant something. They were a reminder of where they'd started, of the gift Zander had given her that day in the coffee shop. Life continued its beautiful, messy progression. Janet started elementary school, smart and curious and kind. Marcus followed 2 years later, quieter than his sister but just as determined. They fought like siblings did, but they loved each other fiercely. Tessa's brothers built their own lives. Marcus had 2 kids now, living in the suburbs and coaching Little League. Joel had become a professor, teaching biology at a university across the country. Danny had just graduated college and was working his first job in marketing. The family gatherings were louder now, filled with cousins and spouses and new traditions. But they always toasted to Janet, remembering the woman who'd started it all, who'd loved them into being. On Tessa and Zander's 10th wedding anniversary, they went back to the beach where he'd proposed. Patricia watched the kids and they had a whole weekend to themselves. 10 years, Tessa said, walking on the beach where they'd gotten engaged. "Can you believe it? Best 10 years of my life." Even the hard parts, especially the hard parts, those are what made us stronger. They'd been through a lot. Tessa's mom's death, the stress of new parenthood, career pressures, normal life struggles, but they'd handled it together and that made all the difference. "I was thinking," Zander said, stopping to look at the ocean. "What if we had another baby?" Tessa turned to him, surprised. "Really? We're not getting any younger. I know. But I see our kids with their cousins and I think about how much I wanted siblings growing up. And I think about how much love we have to give. You want a big family. I want our family, however big that ends up being." Tessa considered it. She was 38, Zander was 41. Another baby would be challenging. But when she imagined their house with one more little person, her heart said yes. "Okay," she said, "let's have another baby. Really, really. But this is the last one. 3 is our limit." Zander kissed her, long and sweet, and Tessa felt like she was 28 again, standing in the coffee shop, meeting this man who would change her life. Their 3rd child, a daughter they named Patricia Rose after Zander's mother and Tessa's love of gardens, was born when Tessa was 39. The pregnancy was harder, the delivery more complicated, but Patricia was worth every moment. "Our family is complete," Tessa said, holding Patricia in the hospital while Zander corralled Janet and Marcus, who were excited but also slightly horrified by their new sister. "She's so small," Janet said. "You were this small once." "I was not. You were. Ask your dad." "It's true," Zander confirmed. "You were tiny. And you cried just as loud." They brought Patricia home and life became even more chaotic. 3 kids, 2 careers, 1 very confused dog. But they managed. They always managed. Years passed in a blur of school events and birthday parties and family dinners. Janet became a teenager, moody but kind, interested in design. Marcus was quieter, more analytical, fascinated by how things worked. Patricia was fearless, climbing everything, afraid of nothing. "She's going to give us gray hair," Zander said, watching Patricia climb a tree that was way too tall. "Too late, you already have gray hair," Tessa teased. "Whose fault is that? Yours, for giving me 3 kids. You said yes." "I did, and I'd say yes again." When Janet was 16, she asked Tessa about her grandmother, really asked, wanting to know everything. "What was she like?" Janet said. "Really like, not just the stories you tell." Tessa thought about it, trying to find words for the woman who'd shaped her entire life. "She was human," Tessa said finally. "She made mistakes. She got tired and frustrated. She wasn't perfect, but she loved fiercely and completely. She taught me that love isn't about being flawless. It's about showing up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. You still miss her, every single day, but I see her in all of you, her strength, her kindness. She lives on in this family." Janet hugged her, and Tessa held her teenage daughter, this amazing person she and Zander had created. "I hope I can be like her someday," Janet said. "You already are, sweetheart. You already are." Tessa and Zander's relationship deepened as the years passed. They knew each other completely now, the good and the bad and everything in between. They'd weathered storms together, celebrated victories together, built a life together. "You ever regret it?" Tessa asked one night when they were alone. The kids were at various friends' houses and they had the rare luxury of an empty home. "Regret what? Any of it. Meeting me, marrying me, this whole crazy life." Zander pulled her close. "Not for 1 second. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, even when I'm impossible. Especially then, you keep life interesting." They made love that night with the freedom of no kids in the house, and afterward, lying tangled together, Tessa felt that same surge of gratitude she'd felt on her wedding day. "I love you," she said. "I love you too. Always." When Tessa turned 50, Zander threw her a huge party. All their friends, all their family, everyone who mattered. The kids helped plan it, Janet designing invitations, Marcus handling logistics, Patricia appointed as official taste tester for all the food. 50 years, Tessa said in her speech, looking around at all the faces she loved. Half a century. And I can honestly say that the second half of my life has been infinitely better than the first. That's because of all of you, but especially because of one person. She looked at Zander. 22 years ago, I was having the worst day. My laptop died, my mom was sick. I was drowning in responsibilities and apologies. And this man, this stranger, offered help without asking for my life story. He said 4 words that changed everything. "You don't have to explain." Those words gave me permission to be human, to be imperfect, to need help. They opened my heart to love, and I've been grateful every day since. Everyone applauded, and Zander came to stand beside her, kissing her temple. 22 years, he said to the crowd. And she still takes my breath away. Here's to 50 more. Don't push it, Tessa said, but she was smiling. The party continued late into the night, filled with laughter and dancing and joy. Tessa looked around at her life, at these people, at this beautiful chaos, and felt complete. She'd come so far from that coffee shop, from the girl who apologized for existing to the woman who knew her worth, from someone who handled everything alone to someone who understood the strength in partnership. Her mom had been right. She deserved this happiness, this love, this life. And she'd learned the most important lesson. You don't have to explain yourself to people who truly love you. You don't have to justify your needs or prove your worth. You're enough, exactly as you are. That was the gift Zander had given her. That was the gift her mom had given her. And that was the gift she'd passed on to her children. 25 years after that day in the coffee shop, Tessa and Zander celebrated their 23rd wedding anniversary. Their kids were grown now. Janet was 22, graduated from design school and starting her own business. Marcus was 20, in college studying engineering. Patricia was 17, applying to universities and dreaming big dreams. Empty nest soon, Zander said, sitting on their back porch like they had so many times before. Scary. Exciting. That too. They'd talked about what came next. More travel, more time for hobbies, maybe getting involved in charity work. The world was wide open. What do you want to do? Tessa asked. Really, truly want to do this, Zander said simply. Sit here with you, watch the sunset, know that we built something good, that's all I need. That's all, that's everything. Tessa leaned against him and they watched the sun go down together. Their life hadn't been perfect. There had been struggles and losses and hard days, but there had been so much love, So much joy, so much laughter. And it had all started with a stranger in a coffee shop, a dying laptop, and 4 words that changed everything. You don't have to explain. Those words had been a key, unlocking a door Tessa hadn't known she needed to open. They'd let in light and love and the understanding that being human, being imperfect, being vulnerable, that was okay. That was beautiful. She'd learned to accept help without guilt, to love without reservation, to build a partnership based on trust and respect and genuine affection. And she'd pass those lessons on to her children, hoping they'd build lives as full as hers had been. "Thank you," she said to Zander. "For what?" "For everything. For that day in the coffee shop, for seeing me, for loving me, for this life." "You don't have to explain," he said with a smile, and she laughed, the sound full of joy. They sat together as the stars came out, holding hands, and Tessa sent one more silent thank you to her mom. "I did it," she thought. "I built a beautiful life. I loved and was loved. I raised my kids the way you raised me, and I'm happy. So happy." The future stretched ahead, full of possibilities. Grandchildren someday, new adventures, growing old together. Whatever came, they'd face it together, because that was what love was, showing up, being present. Accepting each other, flaws and all. Not requiring explanations or justifications. Just being there completely, unconditionally. Tessa looked at Zander, at this man who'd changed her life with an act of simple kindness, who'd loved her through grief and joy, through struggles and triumphs, who'd built a family with her, creating something lasting and real. "I love you," she said. "I love you too," he replied. "Always have, always will." And that, Tessa thought, was the happiest ending she could have imagined. Not perfect, but real. Not easy, but worth it. Not a fairy tale, but something better. A life built on love, trust, and 4 simple words that had opened the door to everything. You don't have to explain. Those words had set her free, had shown her that she was enough, had taught her that love didn't require perfection, just presence. And she'd carry that lesson for the rest of her days, grateful for every moment, every challenge, every beautiful piece of the life she and Zander had created together.